Welcome to But Jesus Drank Wine.
And other stories that kept us stuck. I'm Mead.
And I'm Christy.
In this podcast, we'll explore the stories that kept us, stuck, wanting to drink and not wanting to drink all at the same time.
Join us as we show you that freedom from alcohol does not have to mean a life sentence of misery and missing out,
but actually means living an authentic life full of peace, joy, and purpose.
Hello, my friends. Hello, my beautiful sisters. How are you?
Hi. Hello.
We are so excited. As you say, we say this every single time. I'm so excited.
We're excited a lot.
We're excited. We're excitable gals. We're so excited, though, for serious, to have the one and the only Jenn Kautsch, founder of SoberSis. If you're in the house. If you are in the sober or sober curious sphere, you know who she is already. She doesn't need an intro, but I'm going to give her one anyways. She is a motivational speaker. She's the author of Look Alive, Sis, which I definitely need to get my hands on that. I haven't done that yet. Oh my gosh. Her passion is creating spaces where women can renegotiate their relationship with alcohol without labels, judgment, or shame. Whoop! She coaches ladies who feel stuck in the gray area on the drinking spectrum and helps women get off of autopilot and mindless sipping through the habit of wine o'clock. I love it. She lives in Fort Worth, Texas with her hubby of 28 years and has 2 kiddos in their young 20s. Jenn, thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. We've been wanting to do this for a while, and I'm glad that today it's finally here because this is going to be a great conversation, and just look forward to getting to know y'all better too.
Oh, yay. Well, where should we start? Because we want to hear everything. But tell us, I guess we should also mention, we are so excited about this too, that Jenn is a sister in Christ. And so we are going to have a really good conversation about the sober curious movement and how God fits into all of it for the 3 of us too, right? So why don't you just give us your testimony and how SoberSis got to be where it is today?
Yeah. Well, you set me up really well because it's definitely a God story. It's definitely a God story in my life, woven all the way through, even the drinking, even the struggle, even the fact that I'm now AKA SoberSis. And when you get to know my story a little bit, it's an unlikely pairing. My story, starts probably like many others. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a solid family and really I had a pretty smooth road. I mean, your basic, childhood challenges, but went on to college, pledged a sorority. I was at a state school at a sorority in leadership. And a non-drinker, actually. All through my 20s, which is an interesting part of the story, I guess you could say. I found that growing up in a home where alcohol really wasn't a big deal, my parents, I wouldn't say they were actively teetotalers, but they weren't drinkers. And so I just kind of grew up, kind of hearing the basic rules around drinking. Don't drink if you're not 21. That was the law. Don't drink and drive. And as a good Christian girl, grew up, don't drink to get drunk. And I was like, okay, those are the 3 rules around alcohol that I kind of grew up knowing. I didn't really have a cautionary tale around me of it going really sideways. And quite honestly, it wasn't something I was really interested in because by the time I did get to Texas Tech, where I went to school, being really social and really involved in the mix on campus, it was kind of sobering to look around and go, you know what? That looks kind of out of control to me. It looks kind of scary. I'm dating myself right now. This is, late 80s, early 90s. And this is like pre-Uber, pre-cell phone. Get yourself out of a pinch by phone a friend. No, you're out there. And so there's just my nature, my personality. I was like, no, thanks. That looks kind of not for me. And so it just really wasn't a part of my life. But, there were difficult and challenging and heartbreaking things that happened in my 20s where I think if I would have already had a relationship with drinking of any kind, even if it was just kind of horsing around in high school or drinking socially in college, I would have been really set up for a much earlier drinking relationship in my 20s had it already been in my life. Got married at 24. I married my college sweetheart on the day he graduated college.
I
I'm
love that.
older. And so I'd already been out of school. And literally, we didn't even want to wait the summer. I was like, okay, you are now no longer a college student. You're like an adult now. Move the tassel over. And he married me the day he graduated. So he was 22. I was 24. And we started building a life together, a family, a life. We didn't have our kids till a few years later. But I mean, my 20s were all about building and creating and forming a family. And so drinking hadn't entered in yet. So it really wasn't until my young 30s that drinking kind of entered the picture. It's like, cue the music, cue the drink. I was actually in a home-based business that was keeping me at home during the day with my young kiddos at the time, but taking me out of the house in the evening to do the networking aspect. And so there I was, young mom. I was in my young 30s. So I was probably 32. And I was at a happy hour and a good friend of mine just said, "Hey, Jen, why don't you get a glass of wine with us?" And I thought, you know what? Really, why don't I? Like, hold the phone. Why don't I? I kind of went through my rules in my head, am I over 21? All the things that I kind of had around drinking. And I was like, absolutely. Do I qualify now? Like, it was weird. It was like, I just kind of opened the door and I didn't even really realize what I was opening the door to, because it was so innocent and naive, really, on my part. And so I was like, sure, order me something, I'll ditch the sweet tea tonight and try some of this, elixir that everyone seems to be all excited about as adults. This is going to be different than like being a crazy kid. This is going to be an adult thing. And girls, I got to tell you, my friend ordered that white Zinfandel, had it brought out to me. I literally didn't even know what to order. And I had that first drink and it was memorable to me because I think I was so much older, and beneath the surface of my life, the pressure of, being married, being a mom, building a business, watching another business start to go up in flames, all of the stress and pressures of life were kind of smoldering under there. And then that drink kind of met with the anxiety and pressure that I was already feeling. And the two collided and gave me quite a euphoric, blissful feeling, and immediately encouraged that like, this is what you do. Welcome to the club. Welcome to the party. And I'm like, well, I have been late to the party, but boy, if this is, not only like legal, but glamorized and encouraged, I'm in. I'm all about it. How fun is this? This is not, there's nothing, quote, wrong with this. And I still don't think in and of itself there is. But where my heart was immediately almost like attached to this feeling and the altering of my feelings. And so that I'll kind of pause there to let y'all just kind of comment on what I've said. But it really wasn't until my young 30s that my relationship with alcohol really even started. I mean, I'd had a handful of drinks before that time. And each one I was like, yeah, what's the big deal? This is gross.
I love how you talked about, because I think this is so relatable. It's like all of that stuff that's bubbling right underneath the surface that kind of creates that perfect storm and I mean, there's so many pieces, but it's like, it just all collides. It's the glamorization of it. It's I'm an adult. It's I'm not doing anything wrong here, like with your rules.
I kind of deserve it. My me time, my reward. We've all heard that, but it's very true. And this is, I will date myself. This is literally 20 years ago. So 20 years ago, the culture around drinking was just starting to shift, where you mentioned the marketing and messaging to women about drinking was about that time really making a huge shift, where they were literally industry wide, like I could just see them in a boardroom going, who is not drinking enough? Who do we need to really target? Who needs to be our new avatar? Oh, it needs to be young moms, working moms, the mommy wine juice culture. And I was really on the front end of that because up until that time, even in my 20s, pregnancy and having little kids, you would have never have heard a mom at a play group talk about a mimosa or met another mom at the park with, something in your Yeti on mid Friday afternoon because it's 5 o'clock almost somewhere. That was unheard of when I was a young mom. But as I started to get further into motherhood and my 30s, that became more and more cute, fun, prevalent, all the memes and the t-shirts and the towels. And my gosh, by the time I was in my 40s, it was in the grocery store, at a bar, in the store. And I mean, I really truly watched the culture change, totally been a part of it, and then been a part of the alcohol-free world changing in the last 6.5 years. So I've kind of got this kind of unique vantage point, I guess, from being a non-drinker for so long, then being really deep in the pitcher plant, but not so deep that I couldn't fly out. I always flew away, but always went back in. And then to now be in my young 50s and having changed my relationship with drinking in my late 40s. Yeah, I can just almost like pull back and see the society change.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. When you were talking about the men in the boardrooms, I actually had a client that used to work for big alcohol. And she literally said, like, they would say exactly what you just said and literally mentioned, part of the avatar was go after the moms in the minivans. Like,
Yep.
that's who you're
Get
going
the
for.
soccer mom.
Yeah. Get the soccer mom. Yeah.
Yeah. Who's just overwhelmed, a little stressed out, loves her husband, loves her family, doing it all right, kind of the detox to retox loop, the person that's going to the Pilates, like I just came from, who's had the green juice for lunch, like I literally just had.
Yeah.
That person, because that was me. I would literally switch from, yoga and kale to Pinot Grigio and Netflix. It was like a swap.
Yep. Yeah. Me too, sister.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what was the catalyst then? What happened for you to decide I don't want to feel like this anymore?
Boy, was I sick and tired of being sick and tired. And you've heard that before. And that's right where I was at, really age 40 to 45. For me, were probably my hardest years of life as a person, as a mom, as a wife. Our oldest, who is awesome, by the way, she's now in her mid-20s. That was her 13 to 18. And that was my 40 to 45. And those were just challenging years of parenting, of marriage, of, I just started to feel like I was kind of losing myself, playing smaller. But the catalyst for me was, quite honestly, us leaving that season. And I say us because she turned 18 and was ready to move on, and actually almost 19, move across the country. And I thought, okay, I'm at a pivot point myself. I can reinvent myself too. It's kind of cool when you're a kid because when you change seasons, like high school to college or college to adulthood, you get a kind of a new chance at like how you want to show up. And I really felt like it was kind of my chance to mid 40s, I wanted to show up differently at 50 than I did 40. And I thought, well, I can't do that overnight. It's not going to be a 3-day juice cleanse. I mean, this is going to take a lot more work to really get my mind, my body, and my spirit back in alignment because I knew I was totally out of alignment in every way. I mean, I was chasing my own tail. And so at that time, that's when I really started picking up on the sober, curious movement and the incredible women and men who have gone before me that were leading the way and reading their books, listening to their podcast, and really just trying to learn the science was huge for me because I'd never heard of all this. And so that it was a pivotal time for sure.
I'm curious, and I mean, you don't have to give all the gory details, but like the difference between, like you wanted to show up differently. And I know I have like clients in mind in my head who are like, okay, but like how were you showing up? Like how much wine were you drinking? Like give me the juicy details of what did your drinking look like during that time that then prompted that. Cause that's,
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Me. Great question. Honest answer. I would say on the outside, especially socially speaking, my drinking really looked like everybody else, truly. I think the fact that I even stepped into this space as SoberSis was quite a shock to a lot of people around me because they didn't ever cast me as someone with a drinking problem. In fact, a lot of people knew me as a non-drinker if they hadn't seen me in a while. Like if I got together with college friends or people that knew me in my 20s, they might have missed that 15-year drinking gap in there that I only had about a 15-year drinking career. It's a mouthful. Which all in, I mean, I work with ladies, and I'm sure you do too, that have been drinking for decades and decades. And mine was fairly short lived, but I'll tell you this: it packed a punch for me internally. So externally, look the same. Don't really have any big epic fail stories out there, but in here, in my own house, and in my own internal world, yeah, ruh-roh.
Yeah.
Now it's got the 80-20 rule going. 80% of the time, and I just talked about this on Instagram, about 80% of the time, moderation management was working for me in the sense that, yeah, I just felt sluggish the next day, foggy brain, woke up at 3 a.m., kind of your basics of drinking. But about 20% of the time, oh, yeah, one too many. What did that look like for me? It looked like kind of glassy eyed when the teenagers are coming home. They're making curfew. I'm waiting up for them, but I'm 3 glasses in and or more. Maybe did the bottle break down? And I talk a lot about that because that was what I had built up enough tolerance to be able to do on a regular basis. I mean, on the regular, I was being able to do, quote, the bottle breakdown, where I'm just going to have a glass. I'm just going to have a glass. And we all know that the bottle has like a bottom in it that just drops out. And over any given evening, I could have, 3 or 4 glasses of wine from 5 to 10 p.m. That's really what was most painful for me was the duplicity that I felt in my own life, the double-mindedness, the divided mind. I felt literally that mental tug of war and at odds within myself pretty much all the time, because if I wasn't drinking, I was thinking about drinking. If I had had too much to drink, I was thinking about never drinking again, knowing that that would never be the case.
Yep.
And it was just this round and round. But I mean, I've definitely got a handful, at least maybe on 2 hands, stories where it was like, wow, I really crossed the line. And my family noticed, especially my daughter, which was really painful because she was my oldest and the one that was really paying attention. And because I am a recovering perfectionist, I'm an Enneagram 1. If y'all are into the Enneagram, I just talk a lot about it. But my desire to be a good mom, get it right. You've got the mom guilt. You've got the Christian mom guilt. I'll throw that on there too, which is not from God. It's really ultimately from the enemy and ourselves. But I had a lot of pressure on myself to show up and always be the beacon of light, the stable one, the voice of reason. You can always count on mom, always. You can always count on Jenn. She's never going to let you down. The way it worked in my family, it wasn't super safe to let a lot of emotion show because we get it together, people. We get it together. And you can use your words and talk about feelings, but even that needs to be kind of in control and articulated well, and this kind of wheels off. And so a lot of my drinking was to feel, and some of my drinking was not to feel. And I bounced back and forth with, sometimes I was drinking to let loose and to let go, have a good crying session, really get into my feelings. And then other times I was drinking to completely avoid my feelings or dull the anxiety that was smoldering inside of me that I had no idea was actually attached to the alcohol I was drinking.
No idea. Have you read my journal? Because I'm like, Feel and not feel. Oh my gosh,
Yeah, I wrote that down. Yeah.
that is so true. And it's so painful to think about that is what we were doing. Cause I'll say we, cause that, I mean, I could have said
Totally.
exactly all of those things. And yet it's also really cool to not to jump too far ahead, to now be in this place where we can reflect back and go, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, well, it's like, of course we ended up where we did with wine. Of course we did. We weren't feeling, and we were, I mean, all of that. And then how that gets ingrained in us with these stories that say, that we need this now. It's part of our, survival kit.
I'm
as a
curious
mom.
about y'all too with this kind of idea, but for me, being kind of so late to the party, being a later in life drinker and already having a really, I would say, really deep and strong relationship, a personal relationship with God. When I brought drinking in, it was almost like bringing in like a third party. Like, I mean, I'm all about the Trinity and the trio. That's one trio, but it's almost like I kind of made it like Jesus plus my little helper, plus my grit and fortitude. We can do this together. And I think early on, I didn't associate how much I was going to, well, I didn't know how much I was going to end up leaning on the alcohol, but I felt almost out of the gate a sense of a little bit of confusion and shame. And because I didn't have anybody to talk to about it, nobody was out there talking about this 20 years ago on a podcast, talking about gray area drinking or wine o'clock, or that you can be a really good mom and a good person and really health conscious, and then also struggle with this. Like either you were an alcoholic or you weren't. If you had a problem with drinking, there was one solution only. And I'm all about a lot of solutions. And I just didn't know that there was a drinking spectrum. And so the thought that I even liked it too much, but didn't even know how to say that, put me in a spot where I thought, okay, I really like this. Like, I like it a lot because I like the way it makes me feel. I like the way it changes how I feel. So now I've got to monitor and control not liking it too much. And that's internal in my world and in my relationship with God. But I kind of externally need to pace this out because I don't want to be like too giddy on a date night or a party, because my 30s were a lot of experimenting with drinking. And so some of my epic fails, I'm a 35-year-old mom, throwing up in a parking lot with my husband on a date night while we've got a babysitter, because I literally just didn't know my limit. It wasn't like I was binge drinking or hiding yet. It was more like I just literally drank 2 glasses of cab too fast and my body didn't know what to do. Well, the shame from that was so heavy and deep in my life. Y'all can imagine what that made me want to do.
Drink more.
It made me want to drink more. So number one, I could get better at it. So that didn't happen again. Got to build up some tolerance here. Got to be a better drinker. Oh, okay. I get it. If that's what adults are doing and I'm just like behind, I've just, anyway, I think a lot of this was subconscious, but looking back now, that's exactly what I was doing.
I love that so much. I love that whole idea of like, you can be a good mom, you can be a good wife, you can be a good whatever employee, whoever you are, and still have an issue with this, right? Like, which is, I think, all of our stories. Like, I'm very much the same. Everybody was drinking the same. It looks like totally normal and totally fine. And to have, like, you called it that, like, duplicity. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was me too. Yeah, for sure.
Which turns up the noise in that internal state where we're already, thinking about prepping for, recovering from, how am I going to never do this again? Like, I mean, it's just, again, that kind of like internal storm is brewing. And it's, eventually going to.
It was crazy making. And I even took a year off. I will mention this in my late 30s, age 38 to 39. I'd only been drinking, 5 or 6 years pretty consistently. Again, my husband and I did not meet as drinkers. So it was not a connector in our relationship early on. It wasn't like, we met at a bar in the party scene, or that we both come from a big drinking relationship. So when I started drinking, he kind of started drinking too. It just kind of, again, the culture was changing where it was like all the dudes are having a beer while they cook out. All the women are in the kitchen drinking the wine. You can even go to a Bible study and it's BYOB. So like the world was changing around us, whereas in college, it was more like drinker, non-drinker. As an adult, it felt more like, of course, everybody drinks. What are you drinking? That was a big abrupt change. So we had only been drinking really as a couple where, again, that third party, come on, alcohol, come to our date nights. You'll make it more fun. Oh, let's sit down and order. Oh, what are we having tonight? Now we can really connect. And it was such a counterfeit connection compared to the real connection that I'd had the decade before alcohol was invited into our marriage. So I really had, but at first it didn't seem like an enemy. It felt like a friend. Didn't feel like a foe. It felt like, oh, awesome. This is like a way to get my mind off of the heavy responsibility and the overthinking and kind of like let that girl loosen up a bit. And, I thought our intimacy was better. Turns out it was just, not fully present. So we really had to navigate a lot of that. And I will say, even though he took that initial break with me from drinking, we learned nothing. We had zero tools, zero. Like we just kind of willpower, white knuckled it, total deprivation mindset, but it's something we just want to do to show ourselves. I wanted to show up at 40 with the, bikini on the beach and kind of reel it in. And guess what? We did great that year because I also had a buddy. I had my drinking buddy also become my sober buddy. And that worked out really well for me because I think if he would have been drinking and it would have been my own journey without any support, I would have totally caved. I mean, at the first anniversary, birthday, or wedding that we went to, I would have been done. But we did it together. And so what did I do to celebrate a year of no drinking? Drink.
Yeah,
Of course. We celebrate with drinking. Because we can. Because we shut
did it. Yay, celebrate. Yes.
Yeah.
But how do you celebrate? Wine, champagne.
Yeah, we totally celebrated by just now bringing it back in with the management system. And quite honestly, here, fast forward, I've been alcohol free for about 6.5 years or so since April of 2017. And it's not been his path. He has not decided to be alcohol free this round. In fact, it's been something that we've navigated as a couple because we started out together as non-drinkers, took that break together. And then I kind of peeled off and went the alcohol free route. And early on, it was extremely difficult for me because it was so engrafted in our relationship and kind of like what we did for fun as an activity, even though it wasn't always that fun when we were doing it. So that's been a journey in and of itself.
Wow. I was going to say that's the question that people are asking too, because that's what we get a lot, and it is hard to, have that awareness that like something needs to change and I want to do this for myself. But I too, like my husband and I, our hobby was cocktailing. Like cocktailing was a verb. That's the thing we did together. We didn't hike together. We cocktailed together. And so what are we going to do when I'm all of a sudden going, let's make this change and he's not on board? And I think that's where it is tough, but there is hope. And just how did you step into that? Like, well, okay, I've got to just do this for myself. And where did you get that first kind of like boost into the future of your alcohol-free living?
Really, for me, it was just starting to work on this concept of having a really strong why. Why was I doing this? And if I made it about anybody else or for anybody else, doing it for my kids, doing it because my husband kind of hinted towards that might be a good idea. He was really the only one that ever even said, hey, because he also caught the flip side of the fun Jenn. He caught the unfiltered version of Jenn, the Jenn that had a few that really all of that anger and frustration and all that would come flying out of my mouth. He caught that girl too.
I
So
have
he
no idea
liked
what
the
you mean.
idea. Yeah, you don't
Me
know what I
neither.
mean, do you?
Me neither.
Oh man. Yeah. Yeah. This nice Christian girl could really let it rip. And could really let it rip. And not proud of that, but
Mhm.
the feelings were still there even after I stopped drinking. So it really helped us as well to go into counseling. I'm a huge fan of counseling, therapy, whatever you want to call it. I think having online coaches and online virtual groups like we have is super critical and important because we're all over the world and people can't always afford, $150, $200 an hour for a therapist. Sometimes it's nice just to have the sisterhood and the camaraderie. But we had some issues because we're in it to win it, as we say at our house. We're really committed to each other. We knew that we had let some things kind of stuff underneath. And part of that was removing the veil of alcohol for me and letting me get to some of those feelings without having a drink to do it. And I'm really glad that we did that. We spent a few years really uncovering and still, do the work to keep our communication open. But I have a story early on when I stopped again. I was like, I can stop anytime I want, but can I stay stopped? That was the secret for me. So I could stop, I could do a juice cleanse, I could do a 30-day, whatever. And I was on, I guess, probably my second week of not drinking. And we went to our favorite taco place. And my sweet husband, Craig, just without even thinking about it, I think he didn't realize what a big deal this was for me because I had not allowed him to see what a big deal this was for me. Y'all know I'd spent so much time minimizing my unhealthy relationship with alcohol and downplaying my hangovers and not talking about it because of the shame. He didn't realize the magnitude and the gravity of how much I was hurting inside and how much this wine o'clock thing had really messed with my relationship with God, with him, with others internally because it was all inside. And so he just
Yeah.
casually orders a beer without thinking twice, like I normally would have. And before I could even get anything out to make my order, I found out they had 0 alcohol-free beverages at the restaurant. In fact, they couldn't even make me a virgin alcohol-free margarita because it was already pre-mixed. And they had no Topo Chico. And I was like, what? Oh my gosh, I'm trying so hard right now to not just have water or a soft drink. I want to drink too. There were no real options. And I remember y'all going to the bathroom, going, I'll be right back. Cause they just delivered his Corona with the lime and salt. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I'm 14 days in here. I don't think I can do this. I'm just going to feel too left out, too miserable. I can just have a beer at a taco diner. I don't need to have a 6-pack. I know this about myself, but it's not about the one beer. It's about the next night and the next night and the next night and all the nights. So I was like, I can't go back. I cannot go back to where I've been. I've got to burn the ships. And so I went in the bathroom stall and I'll never forget it. I'm really glad that I had this vivid memory from so long ago. I literally shed a tear. I literally had a moment of grief for relinquishing and surrendering that relationship with alcohol. For how long it would last, I didn't know. I had hopes and dreams inside that it could be a lifestyle, but that was way too big for me to think of at that time. And so I did. I kind of had a little pouty moment, a little moment of oh, this is so hard. And kind of did this and went out. And my sweet man, again, who had no idea the gravity of what I was dealing with internally, and we really hadn't had a lot of communication about it. He had already put in his order for another. And he's not a huge drinker. He's definitely a 2 slammer back-to-back guy. He's like, one's good, two's better. Let's go. And kind of an intense personality as well. And so before I could even start to formulate the words that this was hard for me and all that, the waiter came back and said, "Can I get you another one, sir?" He's like, "Sure." And so early on, just going, okay, I have got to do this for me, and I've got to start knowing that what I'm gaining is going to be so much better than anything I'm losing temporarily. Because temporarily, this is uncomfortable. It sucks.
Yeah.
It's terrible. But in the long term, play the movie forward. 3 hours from now, when I'm going to bed with my little sober mind on my pillow, I will not regret not drinking. In fact, I've never regretted not drinking the next day, ever. And I'm sure y'all can attest to the
Yes.
same. I've
Oh,
never
yeah.
been like, I really wished I would have last night, had a few or even once.
Yeah, no, never. Not once.
No.
Never.
No.
But there was a lot of regret and shame on the nights that we were drinking, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh my God. So how did it get from those kind of early sober days to growing this incredible platform and being a total rock star like thought leader in this space?
It is quite a journey, isn't it? To take the girl from the taco diner crying in the bathroom by herself
Yeah.
to now feeling just so surrounded and supported by so many amazing women who are also on this journey as well. It was actually after about 8 months of me navigating this journey. I'd had coaches and read books and listened to podcasts, but I really had not yet found my tribe, if you know what I mean. I hadn't found my particular support group or people. And part of that is because I really couldn't find anybody talking about the faith aspect. I really did not see anybody out there addressing the holistic part of the alcohol-free, sober-minded journey. In fact, sober-minded, and y'all know this about me, it's really more of how I look at this journey than I do being sober. I don't really, at least personally, and there's nothing wrong with it, but I don't even really identify as being sober, even though I'm AKA SoberSis. It's really short for sober-minded sisters. It was just too long, so I cut it down.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
But it was Christmas time that very first year that I set drinking aside, and I looked at my husband across the fireplace. It was literally December 25th, 2017, and I said, "Babe, I just wish more women knew what I knew about alcohol, and again, the science and the mindset shift that I really didn't have a drinking problem. I had a thinking problem." And if I could really work on letting other women know, even just my drinking friends, my mom friends, then they might want to make different choices too. I don't want to fix anybody. I'm still really trying to figure this out myself, but I wish other women knew what I knew. And he said, "Jen," and again, you'd have to know this about my husband and I. We're both entrepreneurs. He's a visionary. I'm more of a doer, but we've always owned our own businesses and created things from scratch. It is not out of the norm for us to go, okay, we see a need. We might have a solution to meet that need. Let's create what it would take to do that. So that's kind of how we roll over here in our decades of being together. And same here. He goes, "Well, Jen, I would absolutely love to make your voice louder. How can we do that?"
Oh,
That's my man.
I love
My
that.
man. My
so
drinking man. Sometimes my biggest trigger man. But at the end of the day, my partner in life, and I could not have done what I am doing without his nudge early on. I would have never have done a lot of things that I've done because I would have gotten kind of comfortable. Like, I did that. Okay, we're good. And he's a big thinker. And so I think God specifically placed him in my life for, well, a lot of reasons. We have 2 awesome kids and have built a life together. But I also see him as a partner for me in this very unique assignment and calling that God has on my life that I definitely didn't choose for myself. We remember that college girl that was, standards chairman of her sorority. I don't think I would have been like, "Oh, no, I can struggle with drinking and then help people with drinking. That'll be fun." No, not my plan. But I do feel like God's plan, or how he used my own choices to bring good out of it. And so really from there, we started, he's like, "Well, we need a name. We need a URL. Go to GoDaddy." I'm like, "What? I don't even know." I don't have that amazing, like, build it business sense that he does. Well, I do more so now. I've got to say, I've grown a lot in the last 6 years. But that was kind of what kicked it off. And the first year was just, really putting my content together based on my own experience, what I had learned, and what I had found that worked best for me. I didn't really have my own voice yet. As much as my husband wanted to make my voice louder, well, I didn't really have a voice yet. I was still just like, repeating what I had heard, giving credit where it was due, but that's what I heard over here. Now I want to share it over here. And it
Mhm.
felt like kind of a connector piece into, again, a lot of women who wouldn't maybe pick up a sobriety or addiction book or podcast.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have known to look for that. And so early on, that's kind of how it started was let me curate the best of all I have found. And after a while of that, I started getting my own voice. And that's when I feel like SoberSis, as y'all might know today, really kind of took off, kind of took a turn, because that's when we also started really investing in getting the message out. It was one thing to have the message inside. It was another thing to get the message out. So my
Yeah.
goal with SoberSis has always been to reach as many women as I can. And the good news is between us all, we'll never even get close to
Yeah.
reaching all the women that need to hear from what we have to share. And I really do believe that. I really do believe there are so many women around the globe that need to hear the message of gray area drinking and about the power of connection and the holistic approach. But I know for me, it was really going into the relational side of things. One thing that's very unique about SoberSis is it's less about programs and more about community. I really didn't set out to build anything other than a group of women that can keep wrestling with their relationship with drinking out loud for the long haul. So
Yeah.
I've been blessed to have women in our tribe for 4-5 years now who have been walking the journey, and they're like elder sage, women with as many new women as I can bring in. So we started treating, I feel like it's a ministry in my heart, but I run it like a business because I'm trying to scale it to help as many women as possible. That's why y'all see me out there on all the sponsored ads and,
good.
just ways to get it out there. So that's my goal.
I love the success story. I think this is one, maybe it's the most popular question, Chris, you may agree. Like, how do I do this journey if my husband's not on board? And though your husband didn't say, like, I'm joining you in this, you had that kind of like you called it, the burn the ships moment, which is exactly the language I used too when I started my journey, where I was like, I've got to burn the ships here and I've got to be okay with whatever that, I had all these fears about how this was going to change our relationship. But meanwhile, like, what have I got to lose? Like, it's not,
I was already
either have a
miserable as I was as a drinker. So if I can be a little bit uncomfortable as a non-drinker, but be heading in the right direction, at least I'm going somewhere. At least I'm moving versus just going round and round being miserable in my relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. And the power of it just maybe starting with one person to being able to, like, okay. So often we want the other person, we want our husbands to change what they're
And
doing.
I waited for a long time
Yeah.
thinking that if he'll change, I'll change. Or if he could be stronger now, I could be stronger now. But it was never his goal. It was, and it's still not his goal. And I mean, I've got the memo. I've learned this now. It is not his goal to be alcohol free. He internally, like many spouses out there, he himself does not have the cognitive dissonance that we had. My man does not have the emotional, mental tug of war. Is it serving him? I would say no, because I don't think alcohol really serves anybody, mind, body, or spirit. That's just my vote. That's just my personal vote.
I agree with you.
I don't think it's causing him duplicity inside. He is aligned for him with what he wants to do. When I was drinking, I was doing what it is I didn't want to do. Just like Paul talks about. I was doing the very thing I didn't want to do. Oftentimes, sometimes I did, but many times I was like, I'm pouring this drink and I don't really want to.
Want it.
And I
Yeah.
wanted to not
Ugh.
want it.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted. Yep. And I wanted to be, quote, like him or like somebody else who wanted it and didn't think twice about wanting it and then just had it and moved on. I've come now to see, no, that's not what I want. That's never what I want. I want to
Yeah.
not want it. I want to be free from it. And finally, after I would say it took me a good probably year and a half, probably 18 months of really putting in the work to make it where alcohol, even though I really did have a start point where I didn't have data points. We call that in our tribe a data point. We call a slip up just a data point. I'm just doing some more recon. Just needed to know again, just learning. It's not a setback. It's valuable feedback. The whole progress over perfection motto is what I'm using out there. So it's not really about counting days. It's kind of like one day or day one. But for me, it really has been a marked moment where I decided no more. But that took time to kind of fill in the blanks from the direction I was going in and what I wanted to actually being able to achieve that kind of freedom inside. It was very difficult sometimes the first year, but then every time I would wake up so relieved, or even after everyone got their third drink and I was still sober minded, the relief I felt and the gratitude I felt to be free was worth everything. And it still is. I really guard and protect my sober mind. I feel like it is something that I own that nobody can take away from me. And I feel very like my reformer Enneagram 1 side really comes out when I talk about my sober mind because it's been tested, it's been tried, it's been challenged. Oh my gosh. Over the last 6.5 years and raising kids and getting them into adulthood and building something that at times is extremely stressful and also exhilarating and rewarding. It's been tested and tried, and it becomes more and more valuable to me as I go. But I also think, you mentioned early on, that we have this relationship with God in common, that we're believers. I also think that sobriety or being of sober mind is still something to not be so idolized, though, that we don't remember our dependence on the Holy Spirit and that ultimately He is my source of freedom, not even my sobriety. That's a gift.
Yeah.
It's a gift that He's given me, but I feel like the dependence that I have on Him is the greater gift. And that I would trade for anything.
Oh, I love that so much.
Oh
I
my
want to
gosh.
ask you for a tiny Tina, but like that was so beautiful. And it ties so well into, the dependence on Jesus and why we can't depend on our spouses too,
Right.
like it's just, I think that was a lesson, that I had to learn too. It was like I was leaning on the wrong
Yeah.
man,
Yeah.
to get through it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
that trading the wine dependency for the vine dependency, right? Like, and that's
I like that.
that's something where, yeah, like, and you even talked about like having the third and like inviting the third into your
No.
relationship with God and the third into your marriage, wine, like as that third, and then also, I love the theme too of how like breaking up with alcohol, kicking out the third in that space, and then inviting in a different third, an objective, a therapist, like someone who can help sort through.
Right.
It's like, I mean, that's just such
we
a
were
beautiful.
stuck. We were
Yeah.
in some ruts. And I think, when you've been married this long and you're really wanting to, quote, grow together, which we are, literally, it's happening right now. Yeah, you've got to keep working on your relationship. And I think oftentimes alcohol just, not only is it a disconnector, it's ultimately a duller of the spark that you have. And it just doesn't bring the real person to the table. And one thing I will say about my husband, which kudos to him. We recently just went on a trip. We went to Colorado earlier this month to cool off from the Texas heat. And it was just a weekend together. It's just 3 nights. And I just said, hey, babe, just asking, not demanding. not expecting, but just asking as a favor to me, would you consider not drinking for our weekend together? And I've asked him now numerous times. And I don't ask every time. We just went to a really cool local dinner fundraiser last night with, the open bar. Do what you will. That's not a place I'm intimately trying to connect with my man at a big dinner. Do what you will. And so I have to choose wisely when I ask for what I need and decide when I really need it. But when it's just he and I, or especially early on, if I was struggling, I would just ask for me, not for you. I'm not trying to change you. This isn't a project about you. This is for me. Would you consider? And fortunately, I've got a guy who will gladly do that for me. And that's made a real difference. Just to ask, just to communicate about it. I think when we were drinking, there just was so little communication about drinking in general that it's really been really good to do that.
And that's just where, and I know we're going to Tiny Tina, Christy, but like that's where support can come in different forms. So where we may have in our head that like him not drinking is the support I need. I loved how you shared about how he kind of came alongside you like, yeah, I want to help you use your voice. Like the ways that our husbands can support us in our journey, and we can separate that. It takes that. Anyway, it just works.
That's a great point. You're exactly right. He's very supportive, and it's not through his non-drinking lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe that's a place too where we can ask God, if we're in that place, like, okay, Lord, like what does support look like? I'm so set. I'm thinking this one client, I'm so set on, I can't do this without my husband getting on board. Maybe it's turning to the Lord and saying, okay, what I really want to support, maybe how else could I get support, and how else could I ask for that?
And allowing the Holy Spirit to convict and show each individual person, because then it's more real. It's just like our relationship with Christ. I would never pressure or push that on somebody else because it's such a personal response to a relationship. And I feel like the same with any lifestyle choice or anything that may be a gray area. If I changed anyone else, including the women I work with, if I tried to change anyone else, it would never stick. They would just be jumping through the hoops, doing it for me, checking boxes.
Yep.
It would not be a heart change. And so I believe, only partnering with the Holy Spirit, only partnering with God can we achieve that. And just allowing space for that to happen, however that may look. And there's a lot of freedom in that because, as y'all, I work with women. I've got my 21-day reset challenge. They come through and I have no expectation. I have hope for them. I can see the possibilities, but I'd rather them stay connected in our tribe ongoing and work it out and wrestle it out than try to like check a box and get it done.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. It's so true. That's why it's so hard, right? Whenever any of us gets like a brand new woman in front of us and they ask the question, like, how long is this going to take? And it's like, sister, I have no idea, but like buckle up because it's going to be like the best ride ever. Right. Yeah.
Totally.
So true.
Jenn, can you tell our beautiful listeners where they can find you? And we'll link everything in the show notes as well.
Yeah, so love about your book, please. Look Alive, sis.
Oh,
love that.
I've got it here. I don't know if it's in the frame, but here's my new book right here.
It's
Look
so
Alive,
cute.
Sis. Look Alive, Sis, 40 Days to Awaken Your Sober Mind. And my book is full of like 40, I call them sober-minded seeds that you can plant in your mind to kind of think about. They're little bitty short, I wouldn't even call them chapters because it's kind of a cross between a daily devotional, but yet it's for anybody who's sober curious. I definitely have my faith woven all throughout my life because it's part of who I am. But this book is really for any sober curious person, especially a woman, because all the stories are about females. And so this just came out in April, and I've got all kinds of freebies with it on my bio on my Instagram at SoberSis, one word at SoberSis. I'm actually giving away the first 5 seeds, the 5 digital chapters for free. So you can read 5 and be like, oh, okay, I want the other ones. And so that's exciting. That's at SoberSis And then I'm just launching sobersis.com. I've always had a lot of different websites for different things, but sobersis.com and @sobersis on Facebook are probably where I hang out the most.
Everybody go get the book.
Yes.
We're all going to do it.
It's on Amazon, and you can also get it at lookalivesis.com.
Amazing. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jenn. Oh,
Thank y'all. It's been really great to get to know y'all better than the
Yeah.
name, the faces behind the awesome work that you're doing as well.
Aw. We
Glad to
appreciate
have
you
you in
so
the
much.
community.
thank you.
All right,
Yeah, this is so
ladies.
fun. But why is it? Why do we have to stop?
Oh, I know. There's a lot more we could cover. Maybe
Well,
again.
we might have
Maybe
to have
another time.
a part 2. All right, ladies,
Based
we will
on the feedback you
see.
get, we'll get another one.
We
That's right.
definitely
Yeah.
will. We'll see you next Monday.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us again this week. You can find all of our episodes at butjesusdrankwine.com, and make sure you follow us over on the gram at Love Life Sober with Christy and Mead at I'm Not Sober, I'm Free.
To learn more about what we do, you can visit our websites at meadhollandshirley.com and lovelifesober.com.
Take a screenshot of this podcast and share it with a friend or two.
And don't forget to subscribe so you don't have to worry about missing a single episode. And if you love what we're doing, please leave us a review on Apple or Spotify.
This helps more women who are feeling stuck and alone in the overdrinking cycle to find hope and encouragement.
Thanks, ladies. We so appreciate you. We'll see you next week.